If I can get the selectmen at the table, I'll start the meeting. Welcome to the June 24th, 2019 Harwich Board of Selectmen meeting. Let me read our standard opening statement for you. As required by open meeting law, we are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. See no interest in that. I'll call the meeting to order. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anyone here for a weekly briefing?
Yeah.
Chief Clark?
Good evening, Board. I have an example of your state government and your local government working to take care of the citizens that we all serve. I was notified Friday that a check for $125,499 was deposited with the accountant's office. This was through a program that we enrolled in with Mass Health to help offset some of our billing. As you know, or maybe you don't, that like insurance companies, when we bill for ambulance services, it's a negotiated price. So Mass Health and Medicare, our return on what we bill is very low. The state has acknowledged that, and through this program that is quite labor intensive to participate in, we were able to recover that $125,000. So I'm very pleased with it. It was several months ago that the deputy said Centerville, Osterville, Marston's Mills Fire Departments had a successful program. It's something you have to go look for. And he said, would you like me to look into it? And I said, absolutely. And so hard work with Sue and David in my office, we were able to recover $125,000 to the town.
And if I may, the recovery, that comes from state funds or in
State Mass Health.
State Mass Health, okay.
Fantastic.
Well, excellent. Thank you, Norm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you going to offer us money too,
I don't
Carolyn?
have any money. I'm gonna. I hate following him. Carolyn Carey, Community Center Director, and I just wanted to remind people that we still do have some opportunities at the Seaside Marketplace, which will be opening July 3rd. So if anyone is interested in showing their wares, we are looking for vendors. Please, the applications are online. You can get them at the Cultural Center. You can contact me. I also wanted to remind people that the new fiscal year begins July 1, so it's time to renew memberships at the weight room. And also a reminder that we are signing up anyone in the community who wants to be part of the community yard sale held at Brooks Park, which is on August 3rd, but we already have more than 15 people signed up. And if it's a nice day, we have endless space. Let's hope for a nice day. And if it isn't, we have to go inside, so the spaces are limited. So we're hoping people will sign up for that. And that is done so that any club or organization can raise the money that they need to pay for the rooms at the community center. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Anyone else? Public comment?
I just wanted to announce that we had a phenomenal award ceremony.
Judith, I need it for you to introduce yourself.
Judith Ford, President of the Friends of the South Harwich Meeting House. We just wanted to report that we had a phenomenal award ceremony in Boston at the Mass Historic Commission, recognizing the South Harwich Meeting House project. And we really want to publicly announce and recognize what a phenomenal effort it was, this project, in order to bring us to this point. The numbers of the Board of Selectmen, the numbers of town administrators, building inspectors, and every possible department in this town has had a hand in this project, and we just wanted to say how much we appreciate that and what a great honor this is for not only for our organization, but for the town of Harwich and for historic preservation. So I thought I'd put this board up that they nicely gave us and gave us copies of too, so we hope to get a few of these around town. so people will be aware of this project and look at what we're doing going forward. Just as a quick note, in the middle of July, we
Can you
hope
hold
to...
that, so Jamie, can you get a picture of that?
I can take it over there. I'll bring it over. In the middle of July, we hope to have an entire year of programming ready for the Meeting House, with everything from performance to music to education to public events. It's going to be a phenomenal year for that building and a great year for us. So I'm going to post this over here so anybody can look at it, would like to. And we hope to see you at the South Harwich Meeting House soon. Thank you so much again.
Let me also state there was a fantastic article in the Cape Cod Times. Was it yesterday?
Today.
Today.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice write-up.
He did a really nice job, yeah.
Well, I had a good subject to write about. So.
Well, it's a great thing for the town. I'm telling you, it took a phenomenal amount of people to pull this off. And we were part of it, maybe instrumental, but still a phenomenal amount of people that had to come together in this town in order to support this kind of a project. And I know at the Mass Historic, it was basically us and phenomenal 9 other projects, most of which were all massive buildings in the State House and rooms in the State House and bridges and phenomenal projects. And of all of those, we were extremely small to ever be warranting this kind of award. So thank you again,
Fantastic.
and congratulations to Harwich.
Okay. Anyone else for public comment? If not, we'll move to the consent agenda. I wish to postpone items E and F. This has to do with Dana DeCosta as board secretary. There's some procedural items that I wish to explore further before we bring that back for discussion. So the intent now is we'll add an agenda item in probably a couple weeks when we have a chance to review the procedures and have a good discussion. Steve, you want to?
Accept a gift of $400 from the Harwich Cranberry Festival for the purpose of paying for the tuning of the piano recently donated to the Cultural Center. Vote to approve 2019 annual committee reappointments. Vote to reappoint Jim Joyce to the Planning Board, term to expire June 2020. Per the recommendation of the Interview Nomination Subcommittee, vote to appoint Sharon Flegger as full member to the Board of Health.
Second.
Second? You want to?
Yeah, I'm hoping that your motion was actually the following. The revised list, which was not part of our packet for the reappointments, would include Brendan Lowney.
We got that late today?
Yeah, well, actually, they were giving him a bonus 2 centuries. They have him here as 22. I'm pretty sure he's not going to live that long. 2022?
Tell him that.
Okay. No. Kim Borgia is the Housing Authority rep to the Community Preservation Committee with the termination date of June 30th, 2020, and deleting John Preston from that list. Further, the appointment for Sharon Flegger for the Board of Health would be through June 30th, 2022. Was that the motion?
If I may, there's, instead of John Preston, I think you need to substitute Elaine Shiven as, because her term, that's probably a mistake, her term expires the end of this month.
Okay.
And so the attempt was to reappoint her.
Okay.
Is your motion, is that
Yes.
acceptable?
I still second that.
Okay, so you take yes.
Any more discussion?
Just a note on, when we take the vote, I'll be recusing myself from item A.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm on the reappointment list, so I've got to recuse myself from that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
We have 3 of us yet,
Good.
so we're good. There's 2 reclusions, all in favor of the consent agenda.
Aye.
3-0-2.
302. Thank you.
Moving on to public hearings and this is actually a presentation. We want to talk about the Safe Routes to Schools update. Mayor Aldag, is that the right? Principal of the Harwich Elementary School and Griffin Ryder Town Engineer.
Good evening. My name is Mary Oldak. I'm the very proud principal of Harwich Elementary School. I'm Griffin Ryder, town engineer, and I are here tonight to give you an update on the Safe Routes to School sidewalk grant that we received back in the wintertime. I just wanted to give you some background on Safe Routes to School and Harwich Elementary's involvement with the program. It goes back a couple of years. Safe Routes to School is a program through the Mass DOT that encourages schools to promote walking to school, riding bikes, and pedestrian access to the facilities around the school. And the way that we became involved with Safe Routes to School is around practicing our crisis drills with our students and the evacuation of our building. And that is how we began to participate in Safe Routes to School. And then we also have had bike rodeos, summer safety bike rodeos for the students. So because of our involvement with Safe Routes to School, we had achieved a gold level status with the Mass Department of Transportation through this program. And also, we also had a very strong application because of that, and also because we have about 40% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. And so we were awarded points based upon different criteria. The application came to our attention back in December. It was a combined application with Harwich Elementary School and the town of Harwich. And we had looked at the improvement of the crisis route for our students for the evacuation. On any given school day, we can have almost 700 people in our building. We have approximately 560 students in the building, plus about 100 staff, visitors, volunteers. And the crisis route really is down these primary sidewalks, down South Street, up Sisson Road, down Main Street, to our areas that are identified for the students to reassemble. And what we noticed through these drills was that the sidewalks were certainly not ADA compliant, too narrow to really progress more than one or two abreast. And we also put in our application the improvement of the access to the town recreation facilities, connecting to the bike route, connecting up to the town rec center, as well as the educational facility connection to Brooks Free Library as well, and to our park behind the school. We did have a kickoff meeting with Mass DOT and the Cape Cod Commission and the town, the fire department, the police department, and the school just last week, and Griffin's going to update you on the progress in that regard.
Thanks, Mary. As Mary indicated, I'm Griffin Ryder, I'm town engineer, and basically just want to walk you through sort of where the project's at right now and the next steps moving forward. The map that you see here on the wall that was also in your packets basically shows the limits of the project, and the limits are South Street to the west, Main Street to the north, and then Sisson Road to the east, and then southeast. And then one of the other connections that we're also looking at and we want to evaluate as part of this process is the stretch that goes from the intersection of Sisson and Parallel Street east to Bank Street, which is basically right where the backside of the Brooks Free Library is. So basically, Mary did a wonderful job in applying for this grant and getting awarded almost on the order of $600,000. When we met with DOT this week, they gave us some more information. As we've been going through the process and understanding more step by step, we're understanding more about the process. It's a new process for them, so not everyone that we ask has all the answers. But basically, the intent of the process is were 14 projects that were awarded a Safe Routes to School grant, totaling $15 million in total. So they're basically looking to spend about $1 million on each one of these projects. And that $1 million includes design, construction, basically, from beginning to end. The one thing it doesn't include, which we found out this week, is right-of-way acquisition. So as with any DOT or roadway transportation project, right-of-way acquisitions are something that we want to look very closely at. And this grant will basically allow us to have the engineers design it and figure out, or survey it and design it, to figure out exactly where right-of-way limits are before we try and move forward with anything that might impact right-of-way. And that's one of the reasons why we show Parallel Street as a dashed line on this map, is because there's no existing infrastructure there today. So installing existing infrastructure where there isn't infrastructure can sometimes be more impactful than it's meant to be. The triangular area around the elementary school, there is all existing sidewalk through that stretch. However, as Mary indicated, it's non-compliant. It's too narrow, the ramps don't work, and a number of things like that. And this program basically gives you money to get those designs figured out, coordinate with DOT, make sure you have all the correct details and whatnot, and then also, get to construction and get it built. As with any project, there are some hurdles along the way, with this DOT project, it's a process. So one of the things that we learned this week is that the earliest we could be looking to construct this project is 2022, or it'd be somewhere in the range of 2022 to 2024. So we're shooting for 2022, but we understand that it's a Mass DOT process. So the next steps in the Mass DOT process are to file a couple basically notification and information forms. A PNF, a project notification form, is the next step, and these are actually due at the end of this week, which we found out last week, but we're working on that and looking to get that in. That doesn't bind us to anything. It basically just keeps the process going. What they're trying to do is these submittals are shooting towards a deadline of August 15th, which is when the PRC meeting, the PRC committee, the project review committee, which is a Mass DOT committee, that's when they meet and decide to vote projects ahead or not. So the deadlines that we're running up to are going to up to that deadline. So the PNF would be due July 1st, basically the end of this week. The PNF is really just a notification form. It's information about, it's almost the same information that Mary almost submitted as part of the application, but it's in a little different format, reiterating a couple different things that are related to transportation. Sorry. Then the next step after the PNF gets approved by Mass DOT is a PIF, and that's a project information form. That would also include 10% or conceptual project designs. And those project designs are being done by AECOM, which is an engineering firm that Mass DOT has contracted with. So that would be due at the end of July, July 31st, to get to a pre-PRC meeting on August 1st, and then the PRC meeting on August 15th. So there's a couple of quick deadlines that we're looking to hit. If we don't hit these deadlines, the money is not lost. The grant has been awarded to the town. We're just trying to move the process along as quickly as we can. With that, I've got a lot more details, but I don't want to bore you with those. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Griffin. And Mary, we'll hold you to that.
I just want to make sure that I did attend the meeting. We actually went for a walk. We walked the entire route in the rain. When we went through, the one thing that they had indicated, as Griffin indicated, that there's $15 million and there's 15 projects. What sometimes happens on DOT projects, if you get in early, they spend at that million level or more, and then if you're at the later part of the process, you may not have as much to spend. So the good news is that I think we're in the first third, if you would, for having stuff to be submitted. The bad news that they had kind of indicated is that they're not sure how they want to deal with complete streets. What complete streets is that they would ask for sidewalks on both sides, and they would ask for a bike lane. So I think any submission, when we walked it, I mean, this is an excellent candidate to improve sidewalks on one side and to create, a little bit of an area, not necessarily a bike lane, but a little bit of an area on one side. It does not lend itself to both sides. So there are a couple of approaches that we probably will take to do a prioritization, have it go up come up south and then Main, and have that be kind of Route A, and then Route B would be up Sisson. So one thing I was hoping to get for the board would be to try to get close to more of a final design. And as you've heard, we have very tight timelines in order to get us in and under consideration. What they had indicated in part of the Complete Streets process or part of the DOT process is
And it'll have us come back on the 25% design, or is it the 50% design?
It's a 25-75% combined submittal. That's the one streamlined portion of this type of project as compared to a normal TIP or transportation improvement project.
So we will have a public meeting, kind of walk people through that. I think any submission we make on the PIF or the PIF or the PNF, that we would want to make sure that we indicate that it's really the town's intent to improve the sidewalk on one existing side, and that we see it as problematic and challenging to try to do both sides, to almost lay out a case for a project exception. I would say we have, in the time that I've been here as the administrator, we did put in for a project exception. Maybe you remember this, Larry, on the Muddy Creek project. We were under complete streets at that point. They wanted sidewalks on both sides. They wanted the bike lanes. And we were able to convince them that the sidewalk connection from Jackknife Beach to Head of the Bay Beach was really more apropos to the project. And I think here we would want to make the case that part of the reason for this whole effort is to make sure that we can get almost 700 people, including 500 youngsters, safely from one point to another. And when you sit and think about how do we get 700 people to a safe location, there's really only two locations that we can bring them to that make any real sense. That would be a combination of the town hall and library, but more importantly, probably get them down to the community center or to the regional high school to house that many kids. So I think if we can make the case that we need one path in order to get them safely to that, and one thing, walking that stretch, the road that goes into Island Pond Cemetery would then get the kids off of a major thoroughfare onto the rail trail where they're not competing with cars, and give them a pretty straight shot right to the school. There's a back entrance to the high school that's there. But I wanted to make sure that we just, disclose that was information to all of us at that meeting, that they were gonna have at least the initial pass, the AECOM people would have to look at trying to complete that complete streets model to complete this.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I brought this up a few months ago when it first came in. I think it's great. I'm glad that the state might be willing to do this, and it will be a real plus if that happened. But part of where I'm coming from is informed by what happened in Route 137 and Route 124. 137 got approved, but it's not up to their standards entirely. The bicycle travel lanes are narrower, and they gave us the exception for that. 124, we had to ditch on it. My only concern is when this happens, and I would love to be able to push the envelope to have them agree to what we can do in that area. But if we're telling them that we don't want to bust out the road for the multimodal lane and sidewalks on both sides, and we can't go forward because we can't get the exception, are we going to owe the state anything for the endeavor?
Yeah, I think the easier answer to that is no. AECOM has been contracted with to do the preliminary design, so there's no cost to the town.
We're not obligated to follow through on
I
this
think
without
when we get to
exceptions.
when we get to the 50 to 75, I'm sorry, the 25/75 design, they'll want to make sure that they know. The one question that we asked, obviously been through this a little bit, we did ask, are there other towns that are going to be able to comply with that complete streets? And the answer was no. So they have 15 communities that are submitting, and they understand that not all of them are going to be able to comply with that. So I'd hate to lose the money. I mean, it makes sense to me to kind of give this a good solid try, make sure we lay out some of the concerns we have, because we don't want to get into land takings. We don't want to get into that kind of effort on some of these, streets that have been untouched and around for a long time. So I just want to make sure that the board's aware of that. And once we get a clearer sense for where the state's going, because it's a new program, I think there's a level of uncertainty at the state officials. I think that's probably safe to say.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Steve, questions, comments?
I have nothing, thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you've answered some of my questions. I'm hoping there's some flexibility in complete streets, because especially on 124, they buried us at. The Muddy Creek Bridge, we had some items going for us, and that was, we're on wetlands, and so they were forced by other agencies to really give a close look at taking more wetlands away from the bridge. So to Chris's point, we need to have our ducks in a row, and why what we're doing is vital to get the kids back and forth and defend that.
I personally think DOT is going to look at this a little bit differently, because if it comes to a point where complete streets means non-safe routes to school, it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to figure out a way
To do that,
to
yeah.
compromise, even though they don't on
And you
other
mentioned the
things.
25% plants and so on. And at each of those stages, there'll be public meetings for input.
I don't think I completely answered Chris's question. Before the 25% or at the 25%, I don't know which, but right around the 25% design, there's a public hearing that would be held.
Okay.
At that point.
And I encourage you to publicize that so everyone's aware of those as much as you
We
can.
would have to. And I think my intent is to bring updates back to the board at each submission process, just so you guys know
Okay.
where things stand, because it's a process.
Well, I admire the amount of work you did on this, these forms there.
She taught herself how to do it over Christmas break. So, we owe her some gratitude.
With some eggnog, maybe, Ed?
Yeah, if it comes down to complete streets or safe schools, we can help it make it not look good for them.
That's my thoughts exactly.
Is there any questions from anyone in the audience regarding this? I think it's clear from us, you have our blessings, so go forward.
We'll be back before you.
Okay. New business, this is request from the Harwich Cranberry Festival for a partial waiver of facilities fee for courtyard rental for Thursday night concerts at the Cultural Center from $1,050 to $525, and I take it, Ed, you're going to include yourself. Michael?
I just have one question. How much cultural center staff, how many concerts are there, and how many cultural center staff uses it? 7 concerts? And Carolyn, if I may?
Just one of us.
Just one. And does this 500 cover the cost of the just one? If I may? I move that we approve the request from the Harwich Cranberry Festival for a partial waiver of facilities fees for the courtyard rental for Thursday night concerts at the Cultural Center from $1,050 to $525.
Second.
Second. Is there any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is 401 then? Next on the item for new business is a draft budget warrant timeline. And Ed, I'll turn this over to you. We've had some discussions in the past of what can we do to make our life a little easier, move the deadlines up and give us a little more time. So this is the first. I wanted to put this on as a draft first. We have some discussion tonight, then you can review it and get back to me, and we'll bring it back as the final discussion in the next meeting. Ed?
Well, all I did is took our existing timeline that Sandy put together, which is mainly driven by the hallmarks that are in either the charter or in bylaws on time things need to happen, and looked over last year and sort of tried to remember us getting to certain points going, you know, well, this is the deadline, but it would have been great to have seen this before, and putting times in our calendar where we will see them before, rather than not seeing it until the point where we have to approve it. Also, on some of these things, like last year, if I remember correctly, and I may not, we didn't really get around to approving and setting goals until
It
late
was
September.
In the early fall, at least, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that would probably be better to do at the, you know, in the first month of the fiscal year. And I don't think as a group, as a Board of Selectmen, we've ever had on the agenda early on a discussion of what, if any, CPC articles we'd like to sponsor. There's, all of a sudden, we get to the point where we're looking at the warrant and we say, oh, we're sponsoring this and that, you know. Articles have been put in by different town departments, and for lack of anybody else to put down as a sponsoring agency, either town administration or the Board of Selectmen get designated as that person. So it would be nice to actually have that discussion and potentially assign, if we do have a project we want to see move forward, assign that to a department or a committee to prepare. And the same with looking at other types of warrant articles, if there are any specific projects or bylaw revisions or charter revisions we'd want to look at. Having that discussion early on and asking the appropriate committees to prepare to take it up and give us a recommendation earlier on in the process. And that's about it. And then by that time in September, we catch into where the sort of statutory deadlines start taking over. But to sort of front load some of the discussion, and then during the fall, as the departments are preparing their capital requests, which typically appear at town meeting as a warrant article, have those presented, you know, sort of as they get prepared rather than being all held until February, you know, so we can review them and look at them. So, anyway.
Thank you, Ed. Steve, I'll ask you first.
I think that anything that makes this a more enlightened and sort of transparent process for all of us is a good thing, and to, you know, to get things started earlier in the process is a very good idea.
This may be a time to comment your work on goals.
Sure.
Move the deadline up.
I've spoken with Larry and also with Chris relative to the form that we use for the performance management review for the town administrator. I've taken a pass and still working on it at a new approach. And we'll distribute that around to all the selectmen in the next few days, hopefully, for your comment, advice, or rejection, whatever it might be. It's just a thought that there could be a different process. The basis I've used for pursuing it is all the years that I worked in the corporate world. Most of the companies I worked for had a very similar performance management process, which is used by most corporations around the United States. So I tried to use some of the things that were part of that to see if we couldn't create a better process. So we'll send that around. Actually, I'll send it to Larry, and then he'll send it around to all of you in the next few days. And clearly, I mean, it's just an attempt at developing a new structure. So. Looking for input from everybody on it.
I appreciate very much Steve's jumping into this. And our intent is to bring this around and get it done in the next few weeks, so we're ahead of the game this year on goals rather than wait until this fall. Thank you, Steve. Michael?
I have no comments. It's fine.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Based on what Ed had said initially, just want to put my 2 cents in for the charter types things. In the last few years, we appear to have asked the Charter Bylaw Review Committee to do certain things, and then put them in a kind of strange position of claiming that it was their articles. If there are articles, there are articles that we're asking them to help with, which is delineated as a different thing than if there's a bylaw change that the ABC committee or something wants to do, which is up to them. And the other thing that's not here is that at some point in time, they need to vet it for consistency for the structure. And we are not, there has to be something in here that gives them sufficient time to be able to do that. You know, whether it's January 30th or whatever, but I mean, there has to be some awareness that they go through this so that there's no incongruities with the structure of the references or whatever. So those two things are big. If we're going to sponsor something, then it should be at the recommendation of us with their assistance. And the other one is give them enough time to review stuff.
Well, we have a bylaw committee chair here. I'd ask, you have to comment, but I'm assuming you have a chance to comment on the schedule, see if it works, to address the things that Don has mentioned.
Your schedule's running up into
Right.
town meeting. I moved deadlines up all you can because it did look pretty crunched this past year.
Right. And I figure we have the charter as the end point, but we can move things up and give ourselves more freedom.
Right, that's the charter's sort of the last drop deadline, but we'd all be better off if things were backed up a little bit. And maybe at some point we need to address that in the charter too. But to Don's point, we do need time. We're going to try to do a top-to-bottom review of the charter, probably not all at once in 1 year, but we're sort of looking
Are there some,
people to pick up various parts of the charter, look at them for consistency with bylaws, see where language might be fuzzy. But for things coming from you, we need to go through that same process. So the sooner we get even just an idea, it doesn't have to even be language, what would you be looking to change, the better for everybody.
are there deadlines that you wish to add to this as well for your input? into
Not
this?
particularly, but we can look at it and see.
Why don't you look at it,
haven't
if you
thought
will?
about it, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, please look and be sure that we're consistent in what you're doing and what we need to get to Don's point.
Sure. Okay.
Don?
And if I might, Mr. Chair, there's one other thing. It may sound like I'm in the weeds or splitting hairs here, but there's a difference between whether we want to sponsor an article on the ATM and have the funding source as CPC, as opposed to the CPC having an article. Because when they submit them, we don't have any control on the warrant. So
Yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, we need to be more proactive about what it is we're really, that we want to
Yeah.
adopt as
Yeah, yeah,
ours.
yeah.
Because we in the past have had items that we wish the CPC to look at, so I think we should be prepared to do that.
But there may be occasions where we want to put forth an article that is our article
Oh,
for
and
our
that's right.
warrant, but we ask them as the funding source to provide us with cash for that.
Well,
I think we'd follow the normal process of appearing in front of the CPC, right?
We
Well,
haven't
Mr.
actually
Chairman,
done
one of the
that,
things that I think we did this past year was to ask the department heads, at least the departments, we can't do agencies that are outside of the town organization, but we asked them to please submit on their capital forms what they were going to request from CPC.
Yeah.
So that way we could kind of
Good
plan
idea.
and know that we were doing that. So we should be able to give the board a heads up. I mean, we could certainly ask the department heads to do that again this year and try to incorporate that as part of the capital process that Ed has laid out in here as a.
Okay, Ed?
yeah, you know, I have the target date of having a discussion on August 26th of potential CPC articles, and it probably would have been better used to say potential CPC projects that we or
Either way.
or we will either the Board of Selectmen ourselves or one of the other town departments, we would like them to sponsor and put in the project into the process. And then on August 12th, I had a discussion of potential articles and assignment to committees and departments. You know, if there are particular issues that have come up in discussion that we think need to, will need some form of action at town meeting, and the one that comes to point is the whole discussion by the parking committee. Depending on which way that goes, it may or may not need some adjustment of bylaws, depending on what solutions they come up with. But to ask, or at least put the appropriate town committees on notice that we were going to be asking them to help prepare something.
Okay, good. I'll ask again, Pete, please review this schedule, the deadlines, because we'll bring it back soon, but then our intent will be to follow these deadlines.
Yeah.
Because we want to have a reasoned, careful discussion going forward this year.
And,
okay?
And if I may, my sort of ultimate goal is when we come down to this point in February 14th, Friday, article deadline, warrant closes. I always look at that language in the charter that says that articles are supposed to be submitted in final form.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we've reviewed them all enough that they are in final form, and I don't get into the constant article argument with our town attorney who disagrees with what final form means. I think it's pretty straightforward, but.
Chris?
Just two things, Mr. Chairman. Number one, I look forward to, I've had at least one meeting with Steve to kind of go over the performance evaluation. I like the idea that it's corporate. I like the idea of kind of, it's a similar model to what we use. So I'm looking forward to having an update. It's been a long time since the forms I've used have been updated, to be perfectly honest, so I'm looking forward to that. And just since Ed brought that up, I just want to put in a plug that if people are thinking about doing articles, citizens, I wish they would come in as early as they can so we could start to have those be vetted through. We did have a few that had been vetted early, and they were able to get consideration at town meeting, and there weren't as many issues, I think, at least for the deliberation. So I think if people have a thought that they want to do something, the earlier they can come in, the better. And I think the role, at least for administration, and I think for the board on that, is to help people have a good town meeting so they can have their article be heard, validly.
Good, thank you. Don?
Just one final thought, especially in the spirit of giving ourselves more time. If we adopt this, there's some milestones in here that we may want to tell the participants about, like the Monomoy Regional School District. That date is,
We will publicize this.
they should be informed that we're bumping up the schedule.
Yeah.
And if you're comfortable, I'll distribute
them
it
a draft.
around. Yeah, we'll send it to both, both schools.
Them and
The tech
FinCom,
school.
the draft, and ask for
Tech
comments.
doesn't show up here.
Ed?
One of the things that needs to be done is, in the schedule I was working off, it listed
No, they're down later.
all of the school holidays, and I just sort of left them where they were, and I don't know if that's where they're going to occur next year or not.
Yeah,
That
fair
needs
enough.
to be.
We'll check the school calendar too.
Steve?
I don't know, is there any way we can establish a deadline date for people who are going to submit an article?
It's in the charter.
Okay, well, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. So the reference to getting somebody to do it sooner, so that it's,
Well, we can encourage them to, but
it's established as is, so.
yeah, we can't require them to.
Chris?
I think in the time that I've been here, the first year I was here, I think we had about 6 people submit articles. And because they waited to the kind of towards the tail end, we can't, once administration or the board, once an article comes in, if it has, missing things or there's no way to correct it once it's submitted. So really, it's just if someone has an idea and they want to make sure they can get it vetted, we have sent it to the town attorney early, so that way they have a sense for what they're looking to do and how they can accomplish it. But it's really just, and I think that first year, the 6 that were submitted, 5 of them couldn't even be acted on because they were inconsistent with state law. So I think it's more that element that we're trying.
It's our effort to help, because as Chris says, we've had experiences in the past where because it wasn't, and, you know, we can't influence this in the article, but it's to be sure the legalese is right. We've had cases in the past where if the petition article had passed, it wouldn't have done what they wanted it to do.
And those weren't our articles, those were from
Petition
outside the government.
No, I understand that. I think the whole concept of any way to make this a more efficient process, and as a result, have a more effective town meeting is a very good goal, so.
Michael?
So on the goals, so we have first goals discussion listed as tonight.
Yeah.
Continuation of goals discussion on the first, and then set goals. I think we need to push that up a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless you're gonna assign homework tonight for.
No,
for,
we're not. Steve says we'll submit it.
Next week
and
we
then
are.
look at it.
Submit what? Steve's gonna submit
He's
one.
gonna get the draft of the goals, get comments, so we can discuss it in a meeting, and,
And it's pretty much a wide open,
and then we'll put it on the agenda, not, probably not next week, but the week after that, our next meeting.
I
after
think
that.
if the calendar, we're on for next week, July 1st, but off July 8th,
Right.
and then the 15th.
Yeah.
And are you going to be away for one of those two, Larry?
I'll be away for the next meeting,
Next
back to the 15th. So my hope is that Steve has said he's gonna bring it, we'll get it to you people, and then we'll put it on in the packet next week, and then bring it back for final discussion on the 15th. And that moves us far ahead of last year, so I'm hoping we'll be okay with that. Michael?
I just wonder if the board members should be giving Steve, I mean, I don't know when this meeting happened where we decided Steve was gonna put the draft together, but should the board, each board member's gonna have individual goal ideas. We're just gonna go with a draft of we're not sure what, and then tear it apart that night?
No, that's why we're gonna circulate it ahead of time, so you can put your comments in before then.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, the whole point,
But you raise a good point, you want an open
would be
discussion.
to give everybody sort of a copy of what the form would look like with some suggested goals in there. Those are not set goals by any stretch of the imagination. The intent would be for everyone to come back, read through it, contemplate whether the structure makes sense at all, but also, as a result of looking what's in there, begin to form what they think are the best goals, so that we can eventually arrive at, the goals we all agree on.
And that's being done this way because we're changing the form, and we want the form to reflect the actual goals and objectives?
Right. To say it differently, I didn't, and don't want to speak for Steve exactly, but I didn't want the form to dictate what our goals and objectives are. I want to be sure we agree what our goals are, and then create the form that measures those, and so we can have good measures and accountability.
All of this is great and it's commendable, and don't shoot me here, but I think we may want to run this by the state. I mean, the open meeting law, it seems to be getting real close to serial deliberations. If he writes something and you send it out, and Michael gives something else, and we all see what Michael gave, and
No, you're all going to send them to me. I'm not going to circulate it after that.
so we're going to be sealed off from seeing.
Right, each other, until it
Okay.
comes back to the meeting.
Because it just concerns me that we could be duped into a serial
We've
deliberation.
had a discussion. It's all coming to me, and it's coming out from me. Michael?
I appreciate that. I'm just gonna throw a comment out there at this point. What seems to be is there's a lot of private discussions going on. This board has had no conversations about this process whatsoever. And I'm wondering how and who is dictating this, and why so many meetings are happening before we get to a meeting. And I hope that we can actually have a topic that discusses what the Board of Selectmen is supposed to be doing. Because when I got on 4 years ago, we came off of a lot of business being done in the background, and I know a lot of people in the public appreciate things being done at the table. Now, certainly, I know Stephen's mentioned it through the campaigning process, that we need more civility and we need more things done ahead of time. I would argue that this conversation about structure should have been a decision of the five of us, not a decision of people sitting in Chris's office and having a meeting with Chris. We're the board. And I think that this stuff needs to be done at the table. And living in a small town, it's not hard to see who's spending all the time in Chris's office. And I hope that we can be a Board of Selectmen. a five-member board that votes as a five-member board, and everything happens at the table.
I take your point, but let's move ahead with that, because we will, we had one meeting, it hasn't been a bunch of meetings. But I think any discussion, if you start with the structure, we have a more fruitful discussion. It's not to hide anything, and this will all become out in public. So let's move ahead and give this a chance. Anything else on the budget or the timeline? If not, we'll review them so we're comfortable with the dates. And we'll move on to the next item on the is old business. Phase 2 sewer order of taking. Chris, you want to?
Yeah, thank you,
This
Mr.
is going
Chairman.
after the private ways.
This is really just a technical correction. The board at its last meeting voted a order, and you had a list of the private ways, and we didn't have the book and page number. So the attorney recommended that we do an additional order that specifically identifies the book and page number on each of those private ways. So what was distributed in the package really was a clarification of the action that was taken last week and included the book and page numbers on the various private ways. So we're looking for signatures for that action.
Okay. Any questions, comments on this? Don, I know we've had,
My only comment's going to be that I still believe that the underlying certification was faulty. So,
I don't have, you have a comment, Anita? You looked at this before. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Michael?
Just asked, are we voting a new document, or are we voting the same document? Are you asking us to vote something?
Yes, it's a new document. The document that you voted last week was the public ways, the easements, and then a list of the private streets. It did not include the book and page number. She has now asked for a clarification to make sure that we do vote the book and page number on all the private ways.
So this is basically identifying the private ways that was left off
More
last week.
specifically.
Don?
thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason I said what I said is this can't be private ways. Some of these addresses are on Route 137, for instance. If that's the physical address, that's not a private way.
Yeah, I don't know which one specifically
Boston
you're
Road, for
referring
one.
to. There could be ones that the mailing address or the legal address is on 137, but that they also go down the private way, so they could have ownership interests in the private way.
And Orleans Road, the Cape Cod Cooperative Bank, which is on Route 39, Orleans Road. Those are the certifications that I believe the clerk did not make for 137 and 39.
Go ahead, Michael.
Again, I don't know, based on the line item on the agenda, I don't really know what we're doing. And I think that we either have to remove what was voted last week or a new motion indicating, I think last week we had an actual motion written up. So I'm not sure exactly what we're doing still.
Chris, you want to, in terms of the, Don's your point, I don't know of all these, but if you look at the ones on Austin Road, that could be another, border the same property as 137. But,
Just to,
Cape Cod Cooperative Bank.
by way of clarification, I mean, I guess I'll go back through, but the town attorney looked at the order of taking that she prepared last week, realized that the order of taking that she prepared last week for the private ways just gave the listing of the private ways, did not clearly state the book and page for each individual owner on those private ways. So this is a clarifying action to make sure that the private ways, different private ways, you can have one owner on a private way, or more traditionally, you have both people on either side owned to the center of the roadway. So we're just doing a clarification to specifically show that the ownership of the private ways is what we're taking. So it's just a clarification vote that she sought. It is a vote that we're seeking to do because she recommends that for purposes of doing the order of taking.
So, well, Michael and then Don.
Just a comment, maybe in the future we could put that on the agenda so people know what we're talking about.
Okay.
A more accurate description.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was actually, I'm going to go a little bit further than Michael. It would have been really helpful to get the legal counsel's memo to be able to know just what it was that she was looking for us to do. As it's just listed here as order of taking sewer, phase 2.
I assume the
Council-
order of taking was written by town council.
Yeah, council drafted it only.
There's
I
nothing in our
didn't.
packet that says any of this.
Well,
Normally, you're putting, on the agenda, you're putting somebody on notice that if a particular thing is of interest to them, you're giving them sufficient information to know that it's interesting to them to be able to get up out of their house and come to here. There's nothing in this thing that suggests that we're taking another vote and it's going to supplant the original vote, which the memo might have done.
I think it's self-evident based upon.
It doesn't supplant the original vote.
no,
No.
this is clarification of the original vote, so
And by guidance of town council.
I would, Michael,
I don't want to bicker about this, but Stephen's point's taken, and I agree with it, but there's nothing on the agenda that says clearly and concisely to the public what we're doing. We can split hairs about it, we can argue about it, but the agenda process and the Attorney General's rules are very, very simple. And there's nothing in this that asks us to do anything, says anything, and there's nothing in the packet from the attorney. And it's a very simple document to add.
well, we can postpone it till next week. If you-
Actually,
if
Mr.
you'd
Chairman,
rather, we can
We have to have
have it
this.
tonight.
Yes.
I'll entertain a
Have to have it
motion
for tonight.
if anyone cares to move forward. Ed?
Mr. Chair, I'd move that we approve the order of taking prepared in our agenda packet for June, meeting of June 24th, order of taking of private ways, specifying the book and page, citations for those takings on private ways in the area that we're,
Phase 2.
phase 2 area.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Just to clarify Chris's comment, we have till the end of the month of submitting this to get our SRF funding.
We do have to have it recorded at the registry before, so
And,
that's why we need the time.
You know, unfortunately, we're at the tail end, but that's a $15 million interest saving during the life, and so it's not a trivial matter. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So 3-4, 2 opposed.
Thank you.
And we haven't forgotten the comments that we make these more specific going forward. Town Administrator's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things this evening. I have engaged in the process of getting my recertification for my procurement officer status. So I have completed one class on the recertification for Massachusetts Certified Public Purchasing Officials. That was a two-day class right after town meeting, May 14th and 15th. I did pass the exam, so I'm halfway home, if you would. I am taking 2 additional classes in August. One for prevailing wage. Prevailing wage continues to be kind of a moving target. They continue to update different elements of that. And then the second is on real estate transactions. We've done a fair amount of real estate transactions in the past, and I think being on the Affordable Housing Trust, there'll be additional real estate transactions that we'll be engaged in. So I thought attending that would be worthwhile. So those are 2 that I'm taking in the middle of August. I just, on the Affordable Housing Trust, the trust did vote the other day, I think it was last week, to give consideration to 2 parcels. So we did go to town meeting and had several parcels that were deemed to be transferred from the care and custody, if you would, of the Board of Selectmen to the trust. And we did kind of a 1A and a 1B. So the 1A parcel was the Oak Street, close to the entrance of Cranberry Valley. So that will be something that would be considered. And then the second was Sisson Road, next to the Harwich Junior Theater, that same parcel. And in terms of what the vote actually entails, is we've engaged Mass Housing Partnership, MHP, to help us in doing an evaluation of those two sites for development purposes. So what can go on those sites, what are viable on those sites, and how do we commence that process?
Don?
Yeah, as long as we're reporting on that, we've been trying to take great pains to make sure that we don't create hostility among different stakeholders on this. So in terms of the Sisson Road project, what we're not talking about is we are not talking about taking the old one-room school building that the junior theater is renting and doing something with that. We're doing something that, A, is supplementing that, and B, we're trying to look towards some sort of historic feel for any design that we do, so that we can try to get different stakeholders of different types of groups, like history, arts, and housing together. And to that end, before we ever even considered the Oak Street property, we had golf come in and have a discussion with them that it wasn't a raid on the golf course, and that we're committed to making sure that they continue to have a first-rate golf course, and that this isn't going to compete with them. This is just something that we need to do for the community. And I think we're doing that in general. I think it's probably worthwhile to do hard work ahead of time so that we don't wind up even inadvertently creating hostility between groups that could conceivably view these things as something that's interfering with their areas.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Don.
And
Chris?
just the last thing, CDP is a group that we have engaged with. They have run some different programs for training the Housing Institute. I think maybe the first year, Larry, you went to that. You know, I would encourage people that have an interest in helping us with housing. I mean, some of the training they've done has been really quite exceptional.
Yeah, very good.
I actually went up to a training today to meet with some of the finance people that partner up to have these projects go. So we received an invitation. But I believe if you go to their site, they are doing another round of the Housing Institute. You know, it's a commitment. It's I think it was 6 weeks in a row that they did that. But I know other people have gone too. I found some of the material to be pretty enlightening. And that concludes my comments this evening,
Thank you,
Mr.
Chris.
Chairman.
Don? Ed?
Nope.
Michael?
Nothing.
Steve? Well, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion, second?
Second.
Okay,
Wow,
all in
before
favor?
7:30.
Can I sign these?
I think we'll